What's up, guys? Welcome to the Lore Reloaded channel. I am Lore Reloaded, your favorite lore master, sitting here to say hi. If you guys are watching this with video on demand, you know what's about to come up. I'm waiting for people to come up, waiting for people to join. So while I do that, let me remind you, you can catch me at twitter.com/Lore Reloaded, as well as twitch.tv/Lore Reloaded. I'll be doing a lot more stuff on that, but if you join my Twitch, you'll know when I'm playing if you join my Twitter, you'll know when I'm playing on Twitch, because I won't necessarily be putting it on this channel. That'll be more when I'm hanging out. So, waiting for people to come in, we got the one, the only, the great Boofire191, who has sent me both an email and a DM I need to get in response with. I will do that right after this. Hope you're doing well, Boofire. I will be doing it after this specific live stream. 14K Liam, what's going on in the house? We also got Pete, the one, the only Pete, Cyborg XG1, Stephen Julius. I owe you a dance. I'm going to dance for you now. I'm going to stop doing the dances, though. I'm going to start offering other things. But Stephen did actually do a donation, which helps the channel out. If you want to help the channel out, you can always give a super chat or become a patron or become a sponsor. All of these things help expand and grow. I did a dance. I'll still do a dance for a little while, but I'm going to be changing that up and doing some more stuff for you. Good morning, CRR. Admiral Murphy in the house. Xavier Gamer. Apparently they want to talk about Mr. Pete trying to talk about things we don't talk about on the chat. All right, Cyborg. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. Not going to go too far. Before I do, though, I just reminded myself. Hey, guys, doing a charity event, which I'm really excited about. Me and Michael are Anti-Trekker are putting some things together. Brought to us by Star Trek Attack Wing. They sent out a couple of starter packs and stuff so that we could do some games and raise some money. Really excited about that. And tomorrow, we will also be having the end of the series, A Victorious Dominion. So really looking forward to that. Now, let's go ahead and get into the Maquis. So today I was supposed to do, DS9 politics, and I realized that's going to be a lot more in depth than what I thought it was going to be. And so I was like, all right, so let's do the second runner-up. I'll do the DS9 politics next week. And I started looking at the Maquis, and this is from the community poll where people vote what I get to do on Fridays and things of that nature. And when I was walking through the Maquis, it come off as not as straightforward as I thought it was going to be. So I figured, hey, let's do a live stream, see what you guys think and where we want to go from it. So the discussion today will be about the Maquis, specifically those great freedom fighters or terrorists, depending on how you want to look at it. And we're going to take a look and see what would happen if they had become a nation state within Star Trek itself for all intents and purposes. Here's an interesting note, and I don't know that the writers, when they put this together, they did it on purpose or not, but the Maquis had a really great opportunity to become a nation state and to become a power within the Alpha Quadrant. But they lost it when they decided to continue to attack the Cardassians after they had kicked them out of the demilitarized zone. So during the Cardassian-Klingon War, the Maquis had obviously allied with the Klingons, had kicked them out of the DMZ, and then went to continue to attack into Cardassian space. And they had gained such alliances that the Klingons even supplied them with cloaking technology. But here's an interesting point. If they hadn't done that, what if the Maquis had did what they actually set out to do? Instead of going into Cardassian territory, they had actually stayed and created the nation state that they had said they would. The more I think about it, the more I do believe that they probably would still be around in the Trek universe to this day. But I do kind of, I guess really one of the points they'd have to face first is with Dukat. And I even asked this on my community tab what you guys thought when it came to would Dukat have ensured the destruction of the Maquis. And I think that the Maquis, if they had gotten to the Dominion first, would have made a deal kind of like Bajor did. So bringing up some of the things, like you said, Mr. Pete 8680, the feds would have never recognized them. I disagree with that specifically, and let me tell you why I disagree with that. The Federation believes in negotiated peace. They believe in things happening even if they don't like it. And this was still, they still had the vestiges of TNG-era pacifism at this time. During the Klingon-Cardassian War, they still wanted peace. They didn't step in. I think a Dominion War-era Federation would have actually stepped in, whereas this Federation did not. So I think that if the Maquis had said, you know what? The Cardassians are getting the heck beat out of them. The Federation is busy enough trying to keep the Klingons from killing the Cardassians. If the Maquis had said, we'll stop. We're going to make a non-aggression pact with the Cardassians. They leave us alone. We'll leave them alone. We're now a nation-state. Everybody stay out of our way. The Detapa Council would have jumped at that. The Detapa Council was willing. The Detapa Council had a Klingon bird of prey with all these vital pieces of information, just ways to devastate the Klingon Empire, and still wanted to negotiate peace. I think they would have jumped at the chance not to have to deal with another front. I think that they would have closed that front down and put more of their resources to fighting the Klingons. But what do you guys think? Let me know. We got E.G. de la Pina, who just joined. What's going on? Perseus. The Maquis territories were a thin strip around the edge of Cardi space, geopolitically unstable. They were also highly resource heavy. One of the reasons the Cardassians wanted this was because the resources of those planets were just devastatingly good. The Federation didn't need it. They had this large swath of land, but the Cardassians obviously did. So it's not like they weren't giving up or the Maquis weren't inheriting a really resource-rich plot. So really what they failed to have is the infrastructure, and I think that would have screwed them over more than anything. The Epic 00, I think due to the coming events, they would have basically been wiped out regardless. See, I don't know. And this is what gets me. If you consider that what the Dominion did with Bajor, because they wanted to prove themselves, they wanted to prove that they weren't warmongers, that they could keep their own promises, and the Maquis had come to them and said, hey, we're neutral in this. We have absolutely no interest in getting into a fight with you guys. How about we do this? You're welcome to go through our space to get to the Federation. Let's just sign a non-aggression pact. And this is another smaller empire now coming in. There's multiple ways to look at this. First off, they're signing other agreements with other powers, so they're showing they can be trusted. They are creating peace between the Cardassians and the Maquis. Peace between the Cardassians and the Maquis, so they're showing that they can help people get along. From a geopolitical standpoint, I wonder if it isn't worth pissing off Dukat. What if the Maquis are just as old as the original Starfleet Charter itself and Subarticle 14, Section 31 subblock? I don't know what that means. 14K Liam, I don't think all members of the Maquis would accept it because some people join to kill Cardassians, suitors to just kill. That's another thing that I was considering too, and I think that that's worth conversation. The Maquis, let's just remove that there are people in there that just want to kill Cardassians. The Maquis, for years upon years upon years, have been fighting a war, and they finally win, only to subjugate themselves into another power. So they went from Cardassian to Dominion. Bajorans did a similar thing. They went from Cardassians to Federation to Dominion. So would they be able to live with this? And I forget who pointed it out, but someone said that, it's a U, so it would be unsustainable or hard to control. I don't know. I've seen space done a lot weirder than that sliver, that U. I do think that it is somewhat sustainable. Morning Red 234, what's going on, Admiral Saval? I think the Maquis were too vested in fighting the Cardis. It seemed kind of racial after the previous conflict. Yes and no. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, but again, we're just assuming that they stopped. That's where they got in trouble, in fact. The fact that they continued after the Cardassians, it stopped being about their land taken. They couldn't just let them alone. They were even attacking the Federation when the Federation was attempting to assist the Cardassian, and they had no fight in that. You could try to argue that once the Cardassians won, they would try to reassert their power, but they would have never been in any shape. They were completely and utterly devastated by the Klingons. It would take, decades for them to rebuild their infrastructure, and by then, the Maquis would have had their own stranglehold on it. I do think that the Federation would even start bartering and start trading with them. And here's an interesting thing that I kind of considered. Let's say that the Maquis had done that. They had made their own nation state. How interesting would it have been if, at that point, Section 31, or Starfleet Intelligence, came up to the ruling Maquis party and said, hey, the Dominion are coming in. This is going to happen. We're going to be at war. What we need you to do is to ally with the Dominion. Openly declare your allegiance as a Dominion subject, and let them have complete access to your space, and help us fight this from the inside. I don't know how far that's moving away from Trek. That feels a little too, underhanded for Trek, but I think that would have been interesting. Epic 00, if the Dominion War was still to happen, no side could afford to let them be due to their strategic location. It would be like any other strategic location. So here's the thing with that. There were all kinds of smaller empires within the Federation space. If you take a look and you watch some of the episodes, there are empires that exist within Federation space. They just minded their own business. And the Federation stayed out of theirs. And that space would go back and forth between Dominion and Federation during the entire war, which means that you could be neutral and let them have it. Now, Maquis space would definitely be a hotbed, but they could declare neutrality, just like Bajor was a hotbed during certain times. They could declare neutrality and just step back. Don Juan, what? The Dominion would crush the Maquis in a day. It actually took them 3 days to crush the Maquis, but crush the Maquis, they did. The Cardassian is almost as good representation of fascism? Okay. Could they have stole old Federation starships from Starfleet to defend the territories and use them during the early days of the Dominion War? Here's the thing about the Maquis. The Maquis were loved by individual states, generally, from all over. All different kinds of species liked the Maquis. You had entire governments that didn't have an issue with the Maquis, that would not openly declare the Maquis to be bad people. It was only at the federal level. It was only the Federation. It was only Starfleet that had an issue. You had Starfleet officers that were leaving for the Maquis left and right. You had people from all different races, Vulcans, humans, Beta Zeds, Bajorans, I want to say Klingon. I could be wrong about that, but Klingon. Everyone actually sympathized with the Maquis. There is a good argument and probable that the Bajoran under the table were constantly helping the Maquis, even after the Federation took over. Look at what the Maquis used. The ships that the Maquis used are a hell of a lot similar to the ships that Bajor had. The weapons they had were the same. And you see a lot of Bajorans within the Maquis. I have a personal theory that Bajor was probably funding the Maquis up until just right before the Dominion War. I hated everything to do with the prophets in DS9. Show would have been better without the religious crud, says Don Juan. Maquis need latinum and lots of it to be any kind of power. Reminds me of... why are y'all trying to get political on this? Ain't no need for that. So you guys want to talk about the prophets? I'm sitting here trying to talk about the Maquis. Y'all trying to talk about the prophets. Prophets, depending on how you want to look at it, could or could not be gods. It depends on if you want to consider Q a god or the Organians a god. If a god is something defined as more powerful and possibly all-knowing, then prophets technically meet the definition of a god. However, just like Thor, personally I don't consider them gods. Remember watching in Marvel Thor would seem like a god, however, he just had technology that couldn't be understood by humans. So are they gods? You could make the argument that they are lowercase g gods. I personally don't hold to that. The old Starfleet tech was not a match for the Dominion, so why would the same Federation old ships do any better than the Maquis hand than Starfleet? Depending on if they could sign a treaty with the Dominion, I could see them starting to use an amalgamation of technology. I could see them starting to use Federation tech, Cardassian tech, Dominion tech. I could see them starting to put together their own types of vessels. Depending on the type, depending on this treaty, they could, in theory, have the Dominion start to build shipyards for them so that they could build their own ships. Again, infrastructure would be the huge thing. That's what would have screwed them over, because they wouldn't have had any time to do any kind of infrastructure. They didn't have any shipyards, anything of that nature. So they would have to, buy old ships, get old ships. I'm not sure how the Dominion would feel about... I don't know how the Dominion would feel about them using Federation ships. That could get kind of confusing, but it's possible. 14 Kalium, even if the Maquis signed a treaty with the Dominion, there would still be fighting in their space, like in World War II. Both sides mistakenly bombed Switzerland in World War II. Yeah, I even stated that. Just like any other small empire, their space would be in control of whichever ships were there. It would, for the majority of the time, be under Dominion control, and then come under Federation or Starfleet control once they moved forward. CRR, well, from the perspective of an ant, we're also gods, just like Q or the prophets seem like gods to us. I would agree. The ant also can't understand the technology we have. I like the way the economy is done in DS9. Starfleet have everything they need, but need to do a little extra for something they may want. That's correct. Boofire191, I've always enjoyed the idea of precursor aliens becoming godlike figures in sci-fi. It tends to lead to interesting ideas. The prophets were a rather enjoyable part of the series. Yeah, they're misunderstanding or not having an ability to understand humanity and how linear time works was very, very interesting. And how they really didn't care, ultimately. What they cared about was Cisco, and for some reason the Bajorans. Beyond that, they didn't necessarily care in the affairs of the other, what they would consider aliens. Boofire191, if you haven't watched the original series, it gets very campy, but if you ever have some time, watch it. I think you would enjoy the Organians. The Organians, the Starfleet and the Klingons, this is high level, so you'll need to actually watch it. Starfleet and the Klingons went to war, and they were trying to... So, Kirk and Spock had... I think they were stuck on the planet. I forget why. And they were attempting to fight the Klingons, get rid of the Klingons. And the Organians required, ultimately at the end, the Organians required that the Klingons and the Federation couldn't fight. They couldn't go to war. And then episodes after that, they would try to gain different resources without fighting each other because the Organians wouldn't allow it. It's really interesting. I would suggest you go and watch the original series if you can get past the campiness of it. If the Maquis joined the Dominion could have used them to conquer the Cardassians, while Section 31 could have covertly used them to weaken the Dominion from within. See, that's what I'm thinking. First off, the Dominion and the Cardassians was going to happen. Dukat is just that powerful, or not that powerful, but that sneaky, that intelligent. The Maquis, though, as soon as they heard that, could have went to the Dominion and said, hey, we don't want to be killed. What can we do? And I agree. Then Section 31 could have worked within the Maquis. How interesting of a story would that have been? So a couple of episodes, or maybe even a season before, during the Klingon-Cardassian War, you have the Maquis proclaim their own nation state. Now, they didn't do this. DS9 wanted nothing to do with the Maquis. When you look at behind the scenes, they were doing it for Voyager, who completely just erased the idea. That's why they have them as a side note, because that was something that the writers were forced to deal with. But let's say they used it, and they made the Maquis nation state. A couple of episodes or a season before. And then you have Dukat have the Cardassians join the Dominion. The Maquis instantly go to the Dominion, sign an agreement of non-aggression, basically become effectively allies, and allow them to use their space. And then, in the middle of the next season, or towards the end of the final season, you find out that Section 31 has actually been working with the Maquis the entire time, that the Maquis is a front, and that this had happened the entire time. The only reason the Maquis even went to the Dominion was because Section 31 talked them into it. How interesting would that have been? And then you have to consider everything that occurred. And you could have had episodes where the Maquis helped the Dominion kill Federation soldiers or Starfleet officers. And the hate and the vitriol towards the Maquis, but the Maquis were really just trying to get in good with the Dominion to show they were loyal Dominion citizens, so that Section 31 could do things. Maybe they don't even use Odo. Let's get rid of the Odo side plot, and they had introduced the virus through the Maquis. Don Juan, no way the Dominion would have kept terms with the Maquis. See, I don't know. They kept terms with the Bajorans. Cardassians hated Bajorans just as much as the Maquis. And the Bajoran space never technically was under Cardassian control. It was always Dominion territory. So, Dukat can say whatever he wants, but Cardassian never truly owned Bajor. And I can see them doing the exact same thing with the Maquis. Voyager just needed to just not end on the status quo each episode it suffers. Well, I agree with that. I sometimes feel like they wasted Section 31 or just needed as some sort of deus ex machina. Yeah, Section 31 was an interesting and intriguing idea, but it really was kind of a villain of the week. And I hate that they made them villain of the week versus this expanded episode. And one of the problems, I think, with Deep Space Nine is that they didn't plan it out at the beginning. And they should have planned this entire story arc out from the beginning. And I think it would have went a lot better. If you were in Starfleet, would you join the Maquis or help them from inside Starfleet? It depends on what needed to be done. I don't think in that instance, helping from within Starfleet does a lot unless I'm at an Admiralty level. Would I have joined the Maquis? I don't know. Starfleet was obviously not helping the Maquis. It was obviously turning its back on people. It was not following the Charter of the Federation. This was the height of Federation hypocrisy and Starfleet hypocrisy, in my opinion. But would I have left them for it? I think Starfleet does a lot of good. Speaking as an officer, Starfleet would do a lot of good. There's a lot of things that Starfleet does right. And I don't know that I would leave for one glaring issue. Do you think Section 31 supported the Maquis? I don't think they cared about the Maquis in the actual show. I think they ignored the Maquis and just kept it moving. That's what I think. Could Star Trek do a precursor to the Maquis in Discovery or in the IW? I mean, they could. Will they? No, I doubt it. I don't think the Maquis are fan favorites. I don't think a lot of people like the Maquis or think anything of the Maquis because TNG and DS9 were just setting up for Voyager. Neither of them really wanted much to do with it, so there wasn't a lot of building there. And then Voyager completely wasted it. So I don't think there's a lot of energy, especially when you have other things people want to see in Discovery. People want to see Romulans. People want to see, they want to see, I don't know that they want to see Cardassians, but they want to see Romulans. They want to see intrigue. They want to see other things. They don't really care about the Maquis. So, and the Maquis wouldn't have even existed at that time anyway, for sure. So I don't even think they'd start with the vestiges of it. The Maquis just won a guerrilla war against the Cardassians and the Federation. Why would they think they couldn't do the same with the Dominion? They would have an inflated sense of their abilities. I don't necessarily consider them idiots. They were winning against the Cardassians before the Klingon-Cardassian War. They were fighting a guerrilla war, but they were doing it pretty intelligently. They were also outsmarting Starfleet, which isn't necessarily the hardest thing to do, but they were doing a really good job of it. So I think they would have actually taken the demilitarized zone even if the Klingon-Cardassian War hadn't occurred. So I don't know that they would have went against the Dominion because I don't know. I think they're smarter than that. Of course, they did immediately attack into Cardassian space and didn't make their wouldn't make their state. So I don't know. You may be right. They may be idiots. Bajor was the token gesture, proof the Dominion keeps it still. The Maquis had too many former Federation crew and Federation ties. Richard Hawkins, I think you underplay the Dominion political game. The Dominion are a lot like the Borg in both their technology advancements and their ability to consume. Unlike the Borg, though, they're willing to play the political game. And what better political game to play than to make peace with former Federation and former Starfleet officers? Look what happens if you just bow and you kiss the ring. You, Starfleet, you, Federation, you too, we can be friends. This doesn't have to be a massive battle. Look what we're doing with the Maquis. Boofire191, out of curiosity, what would the former members of the Maquis be like in the future after the Dominion War? I assume they'd be similar to what you see in the Voyager crew after the Dominion War. I mean, the Maquis were just people. They were people whose homes suddenly became Cardassian space and wanted to fight for their homes. That ultimately started as just a resistance movement, which then ultimately turned into this whole big rebellion, resistance, terrorist organization. They did a lot of terrorist activities, in my opinion. And apparently my neighbors at like 10 o'clock at night have decided to pick up a car or something. Epic 00. The Dominion knew of the Bajoran link to the Prophets, and more importantly, the Prophets' link to Bajor. They would not risk doing anything to threaten their link home, aka the wormhole. I don't think so. I disagree. There's no evidence to suggest that they knew about the Prophets. They may have, or they knew the power of the Prophets. They may have, but then again, they don't think the Prophets are the real gods. The changelings are the real gods, so I'm not really sure that they're all that concerned about the Prophets. They learned that the hard way, but I don't think they would have been concerned about the wormhole aliens at all. It isn't hard to outsmart Starfleet bureaucracy, but officers like Cisco, Worf, Dax, this would be a lot harder. But they did it. And you know what I'm about to say? Eddington outsmarted Cisco. He outsmarted the next captain who went after him. Really, the only way that Cisco was able to beat Eddington is to become a war criminal. And honestly, on par with, if not worse, than Janeway. And commit chemical warfare and use chemical weapons against planets, which he should have been in a jail from that point on. That's like saying the Americans can't beat... Okay, I don't know what you're talking about, Mercy Gold. I wish we would have seen more of the Dominion races. I do too. I think it would have been interesting to see the subjugated races, because that was just a thing that they said on the back end, you know? Hundreds upon hundreds of races have been subjugated, and we only see a few of them. Mr. Londell J., the Maquis' biggest mistake was attacking Starfleet. Had they left the Federation alone and concentrated on Cardassia, they would have been far better off. The Starfleet wasn't doing jack. Starfleet wasn't doing jack for anybody. The only way Starfleet became effective is when you have Cisco going off and basically dropping chemical weapons on planets to get one guy. Starfleet did nothing. They were useless, and they were the ones that were instigating the Maquis. Now, what the Maquis did, their response, they were terrorists. Don't get that wrong. But Starfleet generally started it. Starfleet did absolutely nothing for them while the Cardassians were beating them, were going into their cities and pulling people out. They were changing the replicators and poisoning them. People were ending up dead, and Starfleet was just leaning on the bureaucracy. Starfleet did nothing. And then, when the Maquis finally turned on Starfleet, they still, for all intents and purposes, did nothing. They were absolutely useless when it comes to the Maquis. Could you do a video on the final 2 episodes of Star Trek Continues in the future? Maybe. I'll put it in the hopper. Here's what I don't get about the Maquis people. The Federation is free, a socialist paradise. Free food, free education, free housing, free medics. I'd move. Okay, well, I mean, that's easy to say when it's not exactly happening to you. So let's say that Pete, Mr. Pete, that you live on the edge of Florida. You live at the very edge of Florida. And all of a sudden, the United States decides to make a deal with Cuba and give that part of the land to Cuba. And, all right, so your house, everything you own, that's going to Cuba. But don't worry, if you want to, you can move. Oh, we'll bring some buses down and a truck, and we'll move you out of what is now Cuban space. But you know, it's okay, because you're living in a first world country. You'll find another job. You'll be able to do whatever you want. It's just your home because of a bureaucrat now belongs to somebody else. But that's okay. It seemed that after Eddington was captured, the idea of a nation-state died. That's not true. So from a DS9 episode standpoint, they stopped focusing because that's all that DS9 wanted to do with the Maquis. They just needed a reason to have the Maquis and have them be somewhat villainish, have them be roguish, if you will. Really, they didn't have a lot more to add to it. But when you watch the series as it goes throughout, there's certain dialogue that leads you to believe that they were still moving forward, but they always wanted to constantly attack into Cardassian space. And that's even with Eddington. Eddington boasts about how some of the greatest victories was under his command, which leads me to believe that he was continuing to push forward too. And I don't think Eddington not being captured would have stopped them. I think they would have got completely destroyed. I don't think Eddington would have been able to save them. Interesting if we could have seen more of the Dominion trying to get the Federation to see them as a good group to join. Yeah, but I mean, they wouldn't have been a villain then. Yeah. At Lore Reloaded, do you think that Starfleet and the Dominion could ever unite against a common threat? Foe, i.e. the Borg. Technically, 6 months ago, I said I was going to do a Lorecraft on a Starfleet Dominion alliance versus the Borg, and I never got to that. I do think that after the Dominion War, definitively, I think the Dominion would take advantage of a... I think they would take advantage of Starfleet and use them to defeat a common enemy. I don't know that the Dominion could ever become actual allies with the Federation or Starfleet. Maybe under Odo, maybe that'd start to change, but I think it would take a while. Even with Odo's leadership, it would take quite a bit for them to ultimately become allies. Eddington betrayed Cisco under orders by the Federation. Yeah, sure. Quick question. Does anyone else think that the prophets knew the Q? I don't know. They weren't really concerned with anything outside of the wormhole, so I don't know that they did. What do you think, Thomas Potts, what do you think happened to the Dominion after the war. I think that things in the Gamma Quadrant... Yeah, that's messing with him pretty big. I think things in the Gamma Quadrant probably stayed about status quo. There was no reason for them to believe... or there was no reason for the Dominion to say, hey, we just lost this massive war in the Alpha Quadrant. I think things would have stayed... status quo. I do think that ultimately Odo would start moving to try to maybe turn the Alpha Quadrant or the Gamma Quadrant or the Dominion into more of a federation where people get to vote. I don't know. That's kind of hard to go with. And if you remember, the treaty didn't say anything about the Gamma Quadrant except they were to allow other ships to come into the Gamma Quadrant. So they kept all of their Gamma Quadrant holdings. My cat's name, that one's Pumpkin. I have another one named Mickey. They actually belong to my kids. No Stripe 361. What if the first part of the Dominion issue was about them trying to get the Federation to like them and having Cisco and Ferenc trying to prove they aren't as nice as they act? I don't think it would have been as good, to be honest. I think the story was told really well when you have this juggernaut, this thing as big, if not bigger than the Federation, come in, and the Federation technology just be nothing against it. But unlike the Borg, they're political. They have the way of actually talking their way out of a fight. I like the Dominion Cold War as it is. So yeah, I mean that's what I think. I like how they put it out. Cat, shout out for the cat. Always wondered where's Data's cat went after filming. Yeah, he came here. What do you think of the Herc returning? I think it's an interesting choice by Star Trek Online, making them space slugs that burrowed into the planet. I'm not the hugest fan of, but I do like Star Trek Online, so I'll continue to play, see where they go with it. They generally do well with stories, so I'm not really worried about it. It's interesting bringing them back. I did a bunch of Foundry missions about some Jem'Hadar rebelling. This was one wild card always. Okay. Lore Reloaded. If the Cardassian wasn't occupied by the Klingons, what would have happened to the Maquis? If the Cardassian wasn't occupied by the Klingons? I think the Maquis... we talked about this before. I think the Maquis would have won. The Maquis were slowly winning against the Dominion throughout the entire series. So I do think they ultimately would have beaten them in the DMZ and kicked them out. May have caused an overreaction by the Cardassians, and they may have tried to use overwhelming force, but ultimately the Maquis were winning. Are we sure Morn wasn't a changeling? Morn couldn't have been a changeling. There's no way. That's impossible. Though I don't like Morn. I think he's the worst part of DS9, in my opinion. He talked way too much more than I'm even talking right now. What I think they did is someone watched Gilmore Girls, and if you know on Gilmore Girls, they were given double the lines you generally get for an episode. That's why they talk so fast. And I think they did that with Morn. And then the promiscuity, it was just unreasonable. My daughters can't watch Star Trek Discovery until they're like 13 or 14, and they can't watch DS9 to 15 or 16 just because of how sexual those episodes got. And it's just unfortunate. Imagine the Dominion coming back and Cisco, now with the Prophet, stopping the fleet to give the Dominion a Class 2 Starfleet backhand. That seems too much... that doesn't seem like what Cisco would do. Yes, I have played the Star Trek mod Stellaris recently. I had actually, within the last month, finally downloaded and played it because so many people were talking about it. Man, a game I would love is Star Trek Legacy. I need to find how to get that game because I would really enjoy playing that game. But yeah, I have played Stellaris. I'm thinking about doing it on Twitch. Which, you and me need to do that, Boofire191. We need to get on Twitch and just play some games because I want to start doing that ever so often. Just hang out with people. This is not a beer. No, this is coffee because I'm going to be up the rest of the night finishing up the Victorious Dominion. Have you played the video? Oh, we already asked that. Morn was an alcoholic. Irony that Morn doesn't talk in Star Trek Online. Yeah, that's one of the things I don't like about Star Trek Online. One of the things I really don't like is that they don't have Morn talking. He obviously talks. That's all he does. Just don't have the character if you're not going to use him right. They don't have Legacy on Steam, Jonathan Stevie. I've looked. They don't have Steam. Do they have Legacy? I'm going to go look after this, and if they don't, I'm going to be mad at you. Where do I go to vote for which one of my videos will come out? Which one of the videos? Guys, if you want to vote, there's 2 ways to vote now. If you want to do it the free way, which is absolutely, positively great, go to my channel. When you go to my channel, look at the tabs. You'll see Community. Go to Community tab. I have all kinds of polls there. I do a poll like every 1 or 2 days, and usually that kind of sets what I'm going to be doing in the future. I also do posts there. It's a good way for me to talk to you guys. And, of course, you can always... another way, and I'm sorry, my computer was telling me it was about to explode. Another way you can always do it is I'm going to start doing some polls on Patreon, which will have some bigger episodes that I'll be doing. For as low as $1 a month, you'll get to vote on those as well. And it'll kind of be like the Victorious Dominion. So in the Community tab, I'll be doing stuff like, what do you want me to do on Fridays? What do you want me to do on Thursdays? Patreon will be doing, hey, what huge Lorecraft idea would you like me to do for the month? So those are the 2 ways you'll get to take a look at it. Let's see. Lore Reloaded. I know this is a little off topic, but have you played any of the Homeworld games? Yes, I want to say. I think I have. Pretty sure I have. You should play FTL. That's the true Star Trek simulator. I have played FTL. It's a fun game. Discovery when spectacle is more important than story. I'll agree with that. I can no longer stand Discovery. I would not suggest it to anybody. Don't waste your money. If I wasn't doing this for you guys, I wouldn't be watching it anymore. It's not worth it. At no point should anyone spend any money for Discovery. No one should pirate Discovery either. No one should watch Discovery. It's not Star Trek. If you want to watch a sci-fi show that has a little bit too heavy agenda on it, it's not bad, but it's not Star Trek. Cyborg XG1, Star Trek Starfleet Command is the best old Star Trek game. You have every right to be wrong, sir. Every right. What is the number of votes for my storyline idea if I give you to possible make? I don't know. Generally, I don't do let me rephrase that. Generally, there's a couple of integers I have to do in order to do lore videos on them. I have to be passionate about it. It has to have a little bit of a wide appeal to it. I'll take a look at it, but it's unlikely that unless it has a bigger appeal to it that I'll be doing lore on that. I'll still take a look at it. I've done lore on things that aren't necessarily big. I really like them. I think they're worth getting out there, but there's no promises. Pina, Star Trek Armada for the win. Definitely. Star Trek Armada is the best. If you're interested in Star Trek Legacy, I have a copy of it. I'll contact you, Admiral Saval, and we can discuss that. I would prefer to buy it if I can. I don't like pirating. It depends. I really just need to go and look for it. If I can find a copy, I'd prefer to buy it. It's just my own personal way of looking at it. I have Bridge Commander and got it working on my computer. Did you play Star Trek Birth of the Federation? I did. Gul Dukat in the Mirror Universe. Is there any information on him? There is not. No, I don't think there is. That would be interesting. That would be very interesting. Gul Dukat in the Mirror Universe. I never even thought about that. Matt Dill, who reminds me of Matt Dillahunty. I don't disagree, but what do you dislike about Discovery? Discovery... So here's my thing. Discovery doesn't care about old Trek. I'm not going to say it's not Star Trek. They just don't care about old Trek. They also don't care... they don't care about talking to people who are Trek fans. What they care about is creating Trek in their own image. They care about doing Trek with their own bias. In Deep Space Nine, in the original series, in The Next Generation, and others, there was always a left-leaning bias there. But they did do it in a way that was Trek first with a message. And you could be a Trek fan and watch it and get Trek from it, even if you disagreed with the message. You can't do that in Discovery. Now, I will say that Discovery did do one thing for me. Discovery did teach me one thing. So let me give accolades. Generally, and I'm not going to discuss this too far more than just to say this. Generally, I have always had, and before I say this, please don't try to assume what my religious proclivity. Man, I can't say words right. Please don't try to assume what I am from a religious standpoint, and don't try to assume what my political view is, because it might surprise you. Because people don't always fit into pegs. But before Discovery, I always had a more pro-life, we don't know what is life, what isn't, when it begins stance. After watching Discovery, all the way up to what I have, they have proven to me that there are times when you can justifiably be pro-choice. And I would have 100% protected the rights of the writers' mothers to be pro-choice if they wanted to. This is reminding me of where I found people arguing over whether Drumhead was SGW or alt-free. See, that's my thing. The Drumhead, I think Drumhead talks to both sides. I think Drumhead really can speak to both sides. So, that isn't even one where I thought that it was necessarily SJW or alt-right. I think that if you want SJW or alt-right, you probably want to do the Deep Space Nine one where they went back in time and talked about what is it, poverty. I think that the one in TNG where the woman, or she wasn't a woman, they didn't have gender. She wanted to be a woman. They had transgender in it. I think that what was another good one? The homosexuality in Deep Space Nine. I think that was pretty good too. So in those have a clear message. They have a pro left-leaning bias, but they do it in a way that either normalizes it or gives a good discussion, doesn't demonize the other side. Matt Dill, I think Gene Roddenberry would be happy they finally have gay characters. He fought hard for them in TNG. I don't know. Gene Roddenberry gets a lot of credit for things that he didn't necessarily do. He took a lot of credit for things that weren't his idea. I do like, in all seriousness, obviously that was me joking, I do like what they did with homosexuality in Deep Space Nine. At that point, Deep Space Nine, I was in a ultra-religious right-wing house, so that was something new to me. I do like what they did with homosexuality in Discovery. And I think that is... I like the relationship between the two. I think that was really done well. I liked Culver and Stamets. And when Culver found out Stamets had been lying to him, that felt real. Who was gay on Deep Space Nine? There was a couple of things on Deep Space Nine. You had Kira kissing herself, which was kind of an interesting thing to see. You had Dax, who kissed another woman who was a former host. You had male people who were pregnant. They had a lot of interesting things on Deep Space Nine. Yeah, Admiral Murphy. Gene was kind of in the way of some of the gay rights stuff in the show. Gene was not the architect people think he was. The one thing I will give to Gene is that I do think he pushed to have all of the different races and stuff together, but he was not the he's not the liberal or progressive savior you think he was. 14 Kalium and Enterprise is the worst. 14 Kalium says an Enterprise trip was pregnant. That's not what I was talking about. And that show glorifies rape. That show absolutely glorifies rape. In Enterprise, rape is glorified. That is the worst show on the... That was really poorly written, in my opinion. Watch Trek Nation. It's a pretty honest documentary on Gene. Shows both the good and the bad. Yeah, I mean, don't take this wrong. I don't hate Gene. Anti-Trekker does a lot of good videos breaking down his stuff too. I think Gene was a visionary. Star Trek was definitely great, but he took credit for a lot of things that he didn't have a say in, and he fought for things. He fought against things that he said he didn't. What if the Maquis were able to set up their own galactic government and both the Federation-Klingon and the Cardassian Union reluctantly recognized the Maquis as a galactic government? I think they would have. I think they would have. I think the Maquis would have always been a small power, not regional like the Cardassians were, but I think they would have been a small power and they would have had some say. I don't think they would have ever been anything big. So, let's go ahead because people are asking me about it. Episode where Trip gets pregnant. Unexpected. Okay. So in the Enterprise episode, we're going to end on this one. Unexpected. Here's what happens. So this alien species has cloaking technology. And this alien species is following the Enterprise, the NX-01 Enterprise. They figure out who it is. They figure out they're being followed, and they disable the cloak, and they find this new species. And something's wrong with the species power grid or some stupid thing that way. And Trip goes over to help fix it. Now, after that, the female, apparently she's female, alien, has Trip come with her, and they experience what is like a holodeck. And so he puts his hand in, and she brings up this thing. He puts his hand, she puts her hand in, and then she tells him, you put your hand in, and they experience euphoria. He goes back, and he turns out he becomes pregnant. A person who completely understands what they're doing, completely understands what it means, does an action with another person who is naive, doesn't understand what they're doing, and doesn't consent to it, and that person ends up pregnant. Yeah, all of the Enterprise crew, T'Pol, Archer, all of them are like, ha, you're pregnant, you got raped, dog. It's so funny. It's so funny someone took advantage of you. It's awesome. God bless them. Because when a person is taken against their will and they get pregnant, that's humor. Star Trek Enterprise, everyone. Trip should have followed the Prime Directive. It was his fault. He had it coming, everybody. It was his fault. He shouldn't have put his hand in. He shouldn't have been dressed like that. His fault. That was just a poor episode. Better writing could have saved that. I agree. I agree. It was poorly written and poorly thought out. It was played for laughs. And because it's male, it's not bad. What about Axanar talk? What do you want to talk about with Axanar, the Terror of Death? The problem with Star Trek, two different companies own the rights. One owns the television. One owns the television deal rights. The one owns the movie rights. I think it may be better if left to one company. I agree. So what about Axanar? We'll end it on that then. We'll end it on a good note. What about Axanar? I watched... Hey, Boofire191. You just watched Axanar. Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? I thought it was fairly decent. Yeah. So, Boofire, I feel like I have the largest case of blue balls after learning what happened. It's unfortunate. In theory, Axanar is still supposed to have two 15-minute episodes. And Alec Peters claims up and down that's going to happen. I have my doubts. I don't think so. Nearly everyone has jumped ship. So I don't think that's going to happen, if I'm being honest with you guys. Yeah. If the Maquis were able to form a galactic government, would they be able to survive the Dominion Cold War and eventually the full-out Dominion War? So we were talking about this beforehand, yes. It is my opinion, sci-fi, and I'll be doing a lore craft on this. But I think that if the Maquis had formed and they had been able to talk the Dominion into doing a similar deal with Bajor, I think they would have been fine. I think they would have they would have stayed back. They wouldn't have done much. There wasn't much for it. But after that, I think they could have survived it, though they never would have owned their own space until after the Dominion War. And the Dominion War ends, I forget the star date, but it ends right at the end of the Klingon-cardassian War. So the Cardassian would not have gotten to take it back. Did you see that one fan film with Chekhov? Renegades is what I think you're talking about. I have watched Renegades. It was interesting. I almost did a lore video on Renegades, and I still may. I don't know. But, yeah, it was intriguing. I liked the hologram mechanic. He was my favorite in that. Kale Bach, first live stream, and we're about to end it, buddy. We're ending it on the end. We talked about rape in Star Trek Enterprise. We talked about the Maquis. We talked about Axanar. We should have Axanar in TV instead of Discovery. Yeah, I mean, CBS wasn't wrong for what they did. And that's an unpopular opinion, and I get that. But CBS was not wrong for what they did. Have you seen Nobility? No, I have not. I have not even heard of Nobility. I wish that they had talked to Axanar and hired Axanar to do that story. I understand why CBS didn't. I can't say that I wouldn't have done the same thing. But it is so good, in my opinion, that I would be interested in seeing it. What if we get some sort of Romulan War show/movie next? You know, I'd have to see how they did it. I would love to see Discovery. Keep all of the effects in Discovery. Now, this wouldn't sit with canon. Anti-Trekker would have a fit. But keep everything we have in Discovery and just set it during the United Earth Romulan War. And then do it like Dominion, like the Dominion War. Actually show it. Actually be a part of the war. Feel like we feel the damage of the war. That would have been good. CBS was legally in the right, but that's a good way to lose goodwill with you. You know, Bluefire 191, if you actually looked into it, and I hate this because this probably means that Peters will never talk to me or let me do anything, but Axanar was completely in the wrong. Axanar was doing things that it shouldn't have. Axanar was trying to sell... Axanar was selling stuff. They were selling like ships. They were selling DVDs. They were selling Star Trek paraphernalia. And they were using it to build their own studio, to which they wanted to make other different pieces. CBS had to respond to that based on what they were doing. It wasn't like Star Trek Continues. It was on a whole nother level. Now, I hate that because I love Axanar, but CBS, who I hate, CBS has made thousands upon thousands of dollars of my hard work. Some of my first videos are still under copyright content ID, and those videos have made hundreds to 200,000 people have seen those videos. All of that money goes directly to CBS. I don't see a dime of it. So I'm not a fan of CBS at all. But in my opinion, when you're right, you're right. And CBS had to respond. They had to. If they didn't, that was going to open up a whole hell of a lot of bad for them. Star Wars loves fan films. When does Star Trek get off their high horse? You know, I wish they'd get rid of the rules. The rules were unnecessary. They have the ability to go after one person and then leave everyone else alone and still win. So they really needed to do that. And I like Continues. Haven't seen the final episodes. I'll need to do that. Continues was really good. So I was sad. I wanted to see the next version of Renegades. I don't usually pay money, but if Renegades had wanted you to pay money, I probably would have paid money to see the next one. So, Sith Dan, I know I'm late to this, but live long and prosper with you, sir. I'm about to get off soon. I keep saying that, but y'all keep having me on. There's a lot of good Star Wars stuff, too. Yeah, I don't know. Man, they are not going to get that car, though, are they? They're working hard for that. I wonder if they heard me yelling the word rape. CBS could just come to agreement, but they own distribution of fan films, but will help people if they want to do one. It's a fine line, because people can't make money off your product. They can't. I can understand that. I'm sure your email gets flooded since you have fairly large following, but I won't give up hope you'll see mine and get a chance to play something like Bridge Commander with you. Cyborg! Yeah, and I also have to send you how to use Armada. I'm sorry. I'm mean to get to you guys. I did get the pictures from Lieutenant Schmitz. That was really cool. Thank you. I didn't put them up or anything, but I think that's really cool. And I'm glad I could give him a shout out and congratulations. All right, guys. Oh, man, I wish, by the way, I'll put this on. I wish, and it'll never happen, Star Trek got bought by Disney. Listen to this. Disney, the people known for shutting down due to copyright. I have never had an issue with Disney. Every Star Wars I put up, every Disney-owned property I put up, if Content ID catches it, they instantly give it back to me. The best thing that could happen to me is if Star Trek was purchased by Disney. Would have been the best thing on the face of the planet for me. What is worse, Star Trek Discovery or Star Wars The Last Jedi? Star Trek Discovery, hands down. There is absolutely nothing redeeming anymore about that. But I'm going to end it on that one. Guys, hey, if you haven't seen it, I just want to give a shout out to both Star Trek Armada or Star Trek Attack Wing by WizKids, who have given us some stuff so we could do a charity for sick kids, which I thought was really cool. Eagle Moss is helping me do the Starship lore, which you guys love. So check them out. Give them both some love. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to see you on the next Lore Reloaded. Sip of coffee.